Welcome to Owner Insights, the podcast that uncovers stories about businesses and their owners. I'm James Orchard, Managing Director of the Crew Harris Orchard. In each episode, I sit down with a business owner to hear their stories. We discuss things like why they started their business, what was their motivation, the mistakes they've made, the lessons they've learned, keys to growth, and what they do differently. These aren't how-to guides or do-as-I-say tips, just real conversations between two business people. Join us as we explore what it takes to become a truly great business. Matthew McArthur, welcome to Owner Insights. It's great to have you here this morning. Yep. You are currently the Executive Director of McArthur.
Correct.
Formerly some other names, and we might get to that a little bit later.
Sure.
Just for the benefit of our listeners, can you just give us a little bit of context about McArthur? How big is your business? How many employees have you got? If you wouldn't mind telling us what your turnover is, how many locations you're in.
Okay. Thanks, James. McArthur is a national recruitment, temporary staff supplier, HR consultancy that also operates in the community care space. It was established in 1969 by my father in Adelaide, retains its head office in Adelaide. It's now grown interstate to all states other than Northern Territory and Tasmania. We've got about 200 internal staff. We have 4,500 temporary or field staff workers who are employed by McArthur but operating within our client environments. And in any 1 year, we might have 6,500 people go through work with us at some stage throughout the year. So it's a fairly large workforce.
Yeah.
And they're engaged in a whole range of fields. So we're involved in aged care, early childhood education, the commercial space. We operate in legal, human services, community care, nursing, etc. So there's a range of specialist divisions. Turnover is in excess of 160 million, and that's from humble beginnings in Adelaide, where we had 14 odd staff in the sort of mid 80s. So yeah, that's a bit of context.
So you from 1969 to the mid 80s, you picked up 14 staff. And then from the mid-80s until now, you've gone to 200 staff. But then, let me get this right, maybe if you could explain this to me. Those 200 staff really oversee the 6,500 that you have going through the business. Yep. And those 6,500, how long do they generally stay with you? Okay,
so we have... look, it can be one shift and it can be 25 years. So we've got some field staff workers in Melbourne who are third generation. So their mother worked with us, their grandmother worked with us, their mother worked with us, and they're now starting to work with us. So there are some long-term relationships and it's not uncommon. We've got, family members, 4 or 5 family members working within our teams. So it can vary dramatically because the nature of the work of what we do varies dramatically.
So that means that these family members come to McArthur not knowing where they're going to end up or who they're actually going to be working for. So McArthur is very much the agent between the individual and the workplace in a lot of these circumstances.
Yep.
So that seems like quite an unconventional way to get a job, but notwithstanding an effective one.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great opportunity for someone to try out a range of employers and undertake shifts with various employers until they find somewhere that they like working, or it helps them decide on where their future career direction might be. So it's a really useful tool for people to get a better understanding of the market, get a better understanding of the players within it, but also create some mobility for them. So we've got people that started with us in Adelaide, have moved to Melbourne, now in Queensland, and, you know, we offer that opportunity for them to move around and not have to work too hard for their next shift, because we're actually looking after that for them.
So there's a lot of talk around about this generation, about how they are going to have 7 different careers, let alone 7 different jobs.
Yep.
I don't quite understand how that works in a lot of professions, but accounting for one.
Yep.
But does that provide an opportunity for businesses like McArthur? And has it, or does it mean or correlate to a growing in your industry and therefore more competitors?
Correlate to a growing what?
Industry.
Number
Number of people doing what you're trying to do.
Well, yeah. I mean, in terms of competition, the market's huge. It's a $23 billion industry at the moment. And you know, there's a world of opportunity out there for people. So, you know, when employment markets are tight, individuals have a real range of choice as to where they want to go. And look, you know, we're an employment or a recruitment firm and a temporary staffing firm, but we're also a career advisor. So people talk to us about the sorts of aspirations that they have. And so we don't just try and match an individual to the task, we match them to the organisation and the culture that exists within those organisations, or the opportunities that might be there for them longer term. So it's just not job matching, it's consulting in its truest form, so that the employer gets somebody that matches their short and long-term requirements, and the temporary has an opportunity to do something that they may not have done before.
So do you have any idea how many businesses use you?
In excess of 1,200, I guess, at any one time.
Around Australia?
Yep.
Yeah. And so 1,200 businesses employing 6,500 people roughly. Yeah, and you're the middleman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we're the employer, so we're the ones who assess the individuals and their needs, etc. We look after their employment requirements. We take care of all of those functions. It's not just a job placement. You know, hand them over and they're now yours. We take full responsibility for these people over the life of their career with McArthur,
which is quite different from a pure recruitment agency, which just finds staff, charges a fee, and then you don't see them again.
Which we do as well. So we have permanent recruitment arm, and that takes job briefs from clients, recruits, casts a wide net throughout the market, assesses that, and then puts forward a qualified shortlist for the client to inevitably interview and then hire their preferred candidate.
From what I can understand, there are a lot of really small operators in that recruitment area, like 1, 2, 3-man bands. Why is it that you think they've not been able to transition to a 14-person office like you were able to in 15 years?
Well, I think it's by choice for some of them. I mean, there are people running from kitchen tables. The recruitment side, the placement side, is a low barrier to entry. So anyone who's worked in recruitment can put up a website and recruit from home, interview in coffee shops, and place candidates as and when they want. So they can manage their own time, generate an income doing what they're doing, and if they've got a small loyal client base, very comfortable life. Yeah. It's a quantum leap from going to that into a paid premise, and then the growth of moving from, one individual investing in a second or a third or a fourth before the revenue comes. And so you need to be in a position where you can actually fund that growth, and be quite confident that you'll be able to grow your client base as well. Some of them succeed through winning contracts. So you might work with a client that goes through a growth phase, and all of a sudden they want not one staff but 10 or 15 or 20, and that gives you some certainty of future income, and people take that leap of faith at that time. So and you're right that the industry is I think I read some stats recently. It was back in 2018, but I think the industry was about $17 billion. And as I understand it, 5 of the largest firms were doing about 14% of that revenue. So there's massive players.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the accounting profession in the 80s. You had the big 6 and then you had everybody else. And there was a gap in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what led our strategy. We were small. We knew the big ones were out there, and we wanted to actually put ourselves in that middle space where we could actually still deliver volume services, but with a high touch quality sort of service, if you like. And so we actually pitched ourselves and grew to fill that, fit in that middle space.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get in a minute to why you would bother going from being nice and comfortable and making decent money to doing what you've ended up doing. So why don't we go back to 1969? So your dad, John, John started the business, and just do you know what happened in 1969? You know, how he started and how it got to where it was in 1985. And we'll get to in a minute where you came along.
Yeah, sure. Look, his history had been in a executive program with Woolworths. He then worked with Hague's in Adelaide, well-known Adelaide brand, as retail sales manager. He helped them open their first store out of the city at Marion. And I think he'd had cause to use a recruitment firm at some stage in his history, and was a little underwhelmed with the outcome. Decided that he could do better, I guess. And in the move to sort of open something up, he had a look around and came across a company called the Adelaide Typewriting Association. Right. Now, that was established in 1885. Yeah. It was established by 2 of the Hardy's sisters from the Hardy's wine family. Okay. Their father had brought back a letter writing machine, typewriter, from the UK, and the sisters opened up a typing bureau for Adelaide's elite, the accountants and the lawyers and architects and professions within Adelaide. So it had been going since 1885. Dad bought it because of its elite client base. Yep. And he continued the ATA really up until sort of late 80s. So
when cutting edge technology wasn't cutting edge anymore.
Well, that's right, absolutely. So that was the beginning. They were in Cowra Chambers on Grenfell Street. He then moved into 32 Grenfell Street. And aside from bureau typing, he started permanent recruitment, marketing his services to those clients at ATA. So that's how it started, basically. Right. John...
That's quite innovative.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And beyond that, I guess, seeing what happened in the industry where, less work was being brought into the bureau and more was being done at the office, John started carting some of the... And when I say carting, we have a person who's still working with us, Jan Thomas, who joined us in 1971 at the age of 14, 15, left school, wanted to be a secretary. She started with the ATA. And when organisations were actually starting to do some of this work in-house, John would take Jan and the typewriter out to the client's offices and do the typing work there. Jan says that she sat in the back and the typewriter sat in the front because it was more valuable at the time. And so that was kind of the start of it. And then as John studied the sector and saw that the temporary services market was growing in the US and somewhat in the UK, he sort of morphed that business from a bureau service to an in-house outsourced service, if you like. So, it was cutting edge.
Wow. So that's fascinating. Did he go to the UK or the US and have a look at what was going on over there? Or?
He'd had some time in the US.
Yeah.
UK, he had some connections in the industry, and John's a networker, so you know any industry professional bodies, he would liaise with those people.
Yeah,
and
so Robert Walters and these types of businesses, as they are now.
Yeah. It's mainly Drake were the pioneers, I guess. We owe a lot to Drake. Their marketing grunt and coverage in Australia really educated the Australian market on what recruitment and temporary staffing was all about. It was, little known industry at the time. So we owe a lot to them. So that's how it started. I guess one of the changes in the business is that temporary staffing model was new. It wasn't growing as rapidly as we liked. So in 83, John hired the heavy hitters, as he calls it, where he brought in some real sales expertise into the business to try and get out to the market that we had, the permanent recruitment clients, and build up this temporary business. And it grew rapidly in that 83 to sort of 88 period.
So that was the commencement of another division, really?
Yes, it was. So we went from permanent recruitment into temporary staff supply. We had done some of it with temporary accountants, or accountants by the hour, as we used to call it. But we then grew it into other sectors, mainly the commercial market. But we started divisions in credit industry, so we started a business called Credit Star. We looked at the local government market and what we could do in that market, and we were big in nursing throughout the 70s, and that was all temporary staffing. That was highly specialist, nursing services in public and private.
So was that where the growth really started?
The 83 period onwards is when it really started kicking. John was originally from Melbourne and had aspirations of having a Melbourne site. And so we, on the strength of that growth during 83 to 89, I think it was 88, we went to Melbourne and opened up just before the recession that we had to have, which was an interesting experience, being funded from a small base in Adelaide. We bought a very small business called Choice Recruitment, I think it was called. Had a few clients. It was in Box Hill, wasn't quite our cup of tea, so we started from scratch, and they were difficult years. That 89 to 92 period was
lots of people.
They were tough times.
So, what were you doing whilst John was starting the business between 69 and mid-80s?
Yeah, so early 70s, still at school, obviously. But when Dad started the business and moved premises, they were very humble beginnings. So he built his own petitions to petition off little interview rooms and things, and we built them at our home at Eden Hills. And I was involved in that. There was tubular steel and soundproofing and that sort of stuff. So, we got involved in that. Dad had, ATA had some printing machines, so an old Gestetner offset printer. He taught my older brother John how to use that, and so John would be involved in printing, marketing materials, so we were all involved in that. Once printed, I would collate with. So
you're still in school, or you're out of school?
Still at school. Still at school. So we'd all be involved. It was an all-in type of thing, and so they were my experiences. And there was always an interest in what this business was. I didn't understand it at the time, but they were early days. I left school in 81. No real idea of what I was going to do. I kind of thought the business would be good, but it would, John was adamant that I should get a few rough edges knocked off me. So I ended up at AMP at the age of 18, 19 as a home service agent. The thinking behind that was that AMP had one of the best sales training programs in Australia. They invested a lot in their people, and we thought, the business was very much becoming a sales operation. So I 19, I'm going around collecting premiums from people who were paying, quarterly or half yearly or yearly, and talking to them about insurance or superannuation. That was a tough gig, but 18 months doing that. And then in 83, I think it was early 83, I got involved and came into the business, worked in the accounting area as a accounts clerk, got some incredible training from Margaret Bennett, who was one of our long-term financial accountants, taught me all of the important lessons around reconciliations, debtor management, and paying attention to the small things.
Important stuff.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware there was a John Jr.
Yes. Yeah.
So what was John Jr. doing at this point?
So
Older brother?
He was your elder brother. So I've got the eldest sister is Gail. She went into pathology. John left school, went into university, did chemical engineering and ended up with Mobil. And then there's another brother, Andrew, who went into civil engineering.
Okay.
And once he completed, he moved out to New Guinea and Hong Kong and that sort of thing. So, older brother John, and whilst he was going through uni, he worked the offset machine, did all of the internal templates and office material and all of our external marketing material. That's when he wasn't acting as a tutor for me when I was going through year 11 and year 12.
So family and business can be a messy thing. Sounds like you were lucky because your two brothers decided to go and do other things. Was it that simple?
They I don't think they ever had a sort of interest in it as such. They had their heart set on other careers, and all have done exceptionally well. You might say I had nowhere else to go and ended up at McArthur, but it didn't end up where any of the others were involved. But we've had nephews work in the business, and that's all worked. Yeah, fine.
Yeah. And the Andrew or John wish they'd gone into the business now that they've seen what it's become, or?
No, I don't think so. I think they're immensely proud of what Dad's done.
Well, you must have had something to do with it as well.
Well, there is a support act, but it's. I think. I'm not sure they actually understand the size or complexity of the whole operation, but and they've seen Dad just be incredibly committed and involved in that business. It was his life basically. So I guess they might think that there was a regret that a lot of the conversation was around the business, but we tried to stop that when it was general family time. So it was more about family and family occasions. It's easy for Dad and I to talk shop, but we had to be very careful that didn't overtake the rest of the family conversations.
Yeah, so that is a tricky mix, isn't it? I mean, it's not uncommon to see sons or daughters watch their parents start up a business and then go into the business. And for it to unravel. Did you have any challenging times, or what were I'm assuming you must have had some challenging times with your dad. What were the main challenges of working with your dad? I think it was more what came with it. So there was a sort of, I guess in the back of the minds of people, what's this guy doing here? He's got to. Did you feel pressure?
I did. Look, I did. I was naive early, but as I took a more responsible role, so when we opened in Melbourne in '89, one of our Adelaide people went to open that business. John was spreading his time between both, and I became the quasi manager of the Adelaide office, if you like. Early 30s, didn't know a whole lot. So I quickly learnt how to listen to people and draw on their expertise and use that, not try and tell them anything, but try and just sort of guide them in terms of how that could contribute to the overall, success of the business side, if you like. So with Dad and I, that gave us, we all had separate jobs. We were never butting heads, trying to do things differently. I learnt a hell of a lot from him. And I shadowed him on some of the senior recruitment work that he did. We did a lot of work in local government with CEO and general manager placements. And one of the, big learning experiences I had was, I think we were doing a CEO role at Campbelltown City Council. I was there just to learn. And John had gone through these panel interviews with all of the councillors around the table. They were getting into decision time and debating which candidate would be preferred candidate. And after 45 minutes, one of the councillors turned to me and said, I'd be interested in what the young fella thinks. And mistakenly opened my mouth and told him what I think. And I've never done it since. So it was something that, I leapt into and quickly learnt that it's not our decision. We're there to make sure that they are basing their decision on the right information. Our choice has absolutely nothing to do with it. So it was a big learning, and that was a big conversation that Dad and I had afterwards, because it was, it kind of put him in it, I guess, in front of his clients, and I learnt a lot from him. I think people. My jovial response is we get on exceptionally well. He talks, I listen. Now, there's a lot of truth to that. He had a lot of knowledge, and I had a lot to learn. So that's kind of the key to it. But as I said, we're never butting heads trying to work on the same things. I filled gaps. And so between really the three owners, we were all doing different things, and my role later was just to catch anything that fell through the cracks and to make sure that it all worked behind the scenes.
But it sounds to me like your father-son relationship had a big advantage in that you were a son who didn't think he knew better than his father, whereas you see that a lot in family businesses where son or daughter's grown up watching mum and dad. Mum and dad turn 60, 65, and the son and daughter think they know everything. They think they know more than father and mother, and they've obviously got different ways and different perspectives. Yeah. But to be able to combine experience with modern thinking is a real trick. But sure. you didn't have that problem?
No, we didn't, and that's probably more about John than me, in that he was accepting. He was a learner, and he would challenge, but he was always interested in good ideas, and so I never felt like it was, be quiet, we know what we're doing here. It was, what's your thoughts on X? And we would rationalise decisions. He gave me opportunities to open new divisions that we'd never thought about, and, they were successful. But, it was, so he was accommodating, not limiting.
Sounds like you're both pretty good listeners.
Yeah, I think so.
So how old's your dad now?
He's 97.
97?
Yes. Yeah.
Years of age?
Yep.
And what's his role in the business?
Well, he's still a director. As until about 2 years ago, he was our chairman. And he handed over that role to one of our other directors, because at the time I was CEO, and we didn't feel that was appropriate to be both. So current chairman is Steve Mathwin, who's a lawyer, came out of Kelly & Co. Very astute, smart guy. John's 97, and he is living on a property down in Winchelsea, just out of Geelong. 300 acres there. He's got a 300-acre property in the Grampians in Victoria, which is his birthplace. And he comes from good stock because his brother, who's 94, is still running the family farm, which is 3,000 acres. And so longevity is key to them.
That is incredible. I mean, you see these stories of Warren Buffett, who's 94 now, and there are other CEOs in Australia who are nearing 100, I think. Have you got any idea how's your dad been able to do that? I mean, genetics obviously got something to do with it.
Sure.
But to be able to continue contributing to a serious business in your 70s, 80s and 90s, how do you do that?
Look, he's mentally active. So John's all about balance, mentally astute, incredibly interested in other people and learning from them. So immerses himself in clients' businesses and wants to know all about it. And has an astute mind, but he also enjoyed the aspect of client entertainment. So he pretty much lived in Melbourne the last sort of 30-odd years or so. He would take the lead at the Australian Open tennis, and he'd turn up every day with clients, and he'd love to hear their stories.
95, 96.
Yeah, absolutely, and sit there until 3 a.m. game had finished.
And drink alcohol.
Never want to leave his clients.
Yeah.
Absolutely, he's just the guy's a machine. But that's that mental activity, and then he would go back to the farm and just thrash himself physically. He is a hard worker. He would just spend weeks and weeks on the farm, and it was just one of those things. He balanced himself and made sure that he exercised all faculties, which just kept him sharp. And as an example of that, I was away fishing on an annual fishing trip with a couple of buddies. I got a text in February of 2020. I think it was about February 25th or something. And Dad had said, I'm really worried about this COVID thing.
Yeah.
And he said, this could be significant in Australia if it gets away. And so I left the fishing trip, went back to the Adelaide office, and I mapped out a risk plan. I looked into what COVID was and its implications, etc. And I developed a risk plan of what that would mean to our clients, to the sectors that we're in, and to our field staff who are out in the marketplace, and the sort of exposure and ramifications. And that's John Mack. He's just
incredible,
ahead of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that theme of being ahead of it continues. So how did you go when at 95? Did you have to tap him on the shoulder and say, that's it for being chairman? Or how did that all happen?
No, absolutely not. He arrived at that decision himself. And I've not spoken to him about the decision, but I'm assuming, knowing John, it was based on his ability to contribute, and I think his ability to contribute at 95 in talking to points rather than running the meeting was going to be a better outcome for us, and that's kind of where it led. And I think he was also interested in some new thinking. He run the show for a long time. It's always important to draw on others. So I think it's those sorts of things would have been in his mind.
So there's a fair bit of selflessness coming through here as well. So yeah. Let's go back to the late 80s and the decision to go from being 14-person business where you could be really comfortable, like all these other small man bands are, to being much, much bigger. Why'd you do that?
Initially, it's on the principle of recession-proofing. So we use that
defensive
word
strategy
a lot in the organisation. So the very nature of our specialist divisions in Adelaide was about recession-proofing. If you relied only on the nursing market, you're at the whim of government spend and budgeting for nursing services. So to spread our interests across those sectors was important to have that balance. The ones that we're in, you would not see a market where all of them would dive at the same time. So it was about that. And John had been through some tough times in 78, 79. He talks about, obviously, late 80s, GFC, Y2K created uncertainty. So there were periods, and I remember running down to the bank for Dad, in the early 80s, drawing out 15 grand from his personal account, so to pay some wages. So we'd seen tough times. So he always talked about robust business, sustainable business, and recession-proofing. So the divisions gave us that. Geographically, it was going to give us that as well. If we spread our interest out of Adelaide, Adelaide's a sort of it's not a market that's hit with high peaks and low troughs. It bubbles along.
Yeah.
But to, I guess, look at an opportunity to grow and balance our exposure, Melbourne was a good decision, even though we questioned that heavily in 90 and 91.
And so what were you questioning? What were you worried about?
Well, we were financing it from Adelaide, and it had the risk of bringing the Adelaide office down because that recession was deep and it was hard, and we were new in a
so you had
market.
Rent costs, you had employee costs, you had travel costs, you had all of that,
absolutely,
and no guarantee of revenue.
Yeah, and trying to fund it from an Adelaide base.
Yeah.
But as Dad's mother used to say, it's always darkest just before dawn. And so we got lucky. Dad's networking ability was able to identify some opportunities in local government. So Jeff Kennett came into power. There was a lot of upheaval in local government. Amalgamations came in Victoria, and we were at the forefront. We did, I think, 60% of the CEO recruitments for the new councils we were involved in. So It was huge.
Off the back of John's networking.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So it was a new life for us. So these were big councils going through change that needed not only management consulting help, but also help in the recruitment process. And then what flowed from that, you were trying to bring 2 councils or 3 councils in some cases together.
Yeah.
Everyone's going, well, where do I fit into that, and how do we decide that second level? So that was a massive period, and it made the Melbourne office that period in the 90s. And having done that and been so successful at it, we thought we'd launch into Sydney in 97, and at the same time, one of our industry friends contacted us and told us about a highly experienced person in Brisbane who was looking for a change from one of the major firms, and we thought, not ideal. We only like to do one market at a time, but because of her calibre, we just opened the Brisbane office at the same time. So 97 was those 2 offices. Yeah. And then we're chasing federal business nationally. And that takes a long time to build. But eventually we decided we would go into Canberra to be closer to the decision makers. So we opened a Canberra office at the same time. So that gave us geographic spread and created opportunities for us to develop national clients and leverage relationships we had in one state across 5 states.
Yep.
Which made sense to us. It was a greater economy of scale, if you like. And we to some degree we reap the benefits of that. It's harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people go, well, that's great. I'm happy for what you're doing in Melbourne, but we've got a relationship with Robert Walters or Randstad or whatever. Yeah. So that was a difficult sell. You had to really be at CEO level if you were going to sell that.
What's the motivation? What's driving you to make these things work and to potentially be a huge business?
Well, livelihood's one. I've got nowhere else to go. But it's my motivation obviously was to see John's sort of dream realised, if you like, and to see what it could become.
So your dad had this dream, did he, of being, being
absolutely.
interstate?
Yeah, and he's even challenged us with thoughts on international. Whether it takes root or not, it's another thing. But you want to make your father proud, and so there was a lot of that. But commercially, my motivation was around the recession-proofing, but also to get out of that lower market and to be substantial enough that the national companies would take us seriously. And that we had the resources to put into a central corporate system. So great being good at recruitment and temporary staff supply, but who's looking after governance, risk management, IT, future development in those markets?
This sounds a lot more like an evolutionary process than a plan. I.e., go to Melbourne, shoot the lights out. Jeff Kennett, thanks very much. Council amalgamations, all that. Then go to Sydney, Canberra, Brisbane at the same time. Wow, now we've got a big business with 5 big offices. How do we manage this? And so you've just described that. That would have that would have added a whole layer of cost, which I'm guessing would have brought a whole new layer of motivation to grow again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so from that period, you talk about sort of evolution rather than planning. 2007 was...
Well, sorry, is that a fair description?
Well, it was to that point. And then 2007, we did our first strategic business plan, if you like, and we've been doing 3-year plans ever since. So we came up with the 2010 strategy because all of a sudden we had 5 different offices, 5 different cultures, determined by whoever was running those branches. No sort of national cohesion, if you like, and we wanted to be a truly national cohesive operation. So to do that, we had to come up with a plan and communicate it to everybody so that everyone could share in where we were aiming and understood what their role in that plan was. And we set aspirational targets, if you like. We set targets on growth. We set targets on internal services, what would make people happier in the business.
So you really added a level of corporatisation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's still hard because you can talk to them all you like, but unless you're getting them together and they're experiencing, it's very easy for someone who's got a problem in payroll in Brisbane to say, to go, those idiots in Adelaide got it wrong. Yeah. And that's because they didn't know these people. They didn't know how hard they worked.
Didn't know those idiots.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we created personal relationships by starting to hold national conferences and get everybody into one location.
How often?
Well, at that stage, it was probably every 3 or so years. They're now biannual. And we get them together so that they know each other. We also try and get our sectors speaking to each other. So we get our early childhood education people. When there's a national conference on, we get them all to the national conference. They work the stand. They talk to clients, they introduce each other and cross-pollinate across states. And that's a really powerful tool. Local government, we've got 15 people that go to a national local government conference plus state conferences, and that's how they mix. So you get like-minded people together that way. But the wider group, we'd run these national conferences so that receptionists and accounts people and all sorts of people, non-income generating, could get together and meet the people that generate revenue, and these people could meet the people that are supporting them, to create some sort of sense of unity and understanding of what goes on in running a business such as ours. And it was powerful. I think people were appreciative, one, that they got a trip, but they came away with it with so much more. These newfound relationships that have continued on in their phone conversations or their Teams meetings, and there's a great camaraderie around.
So how many people you get at these biannual conferences?
Well, the last one we had was 165.
And where was it?
Gold Coast.
Gold Coast. How much did it cost to put that conference on?
400,000.
400 grand.
Yep.
So lots of businesses would balk at that. And there's this balance between investing money like that, which might not be an investment, might just be a waste of time, versus, rather take it out as a dividend, or I'd rather pay down some debt or whatever it is. You clearly make the decision to invest. Where does the profit come into it? How do you balance those two?
Well, look, there's a number of answers to that. You can't seek to be national and create a sort of a tight culture and encourage people to form relationships unless you're going to support that. So the idea is one thing, acting and doing something's another. So we're obliged to do what we can to generate that cohesiveness, if you like, across the country, at whatever cost. Now, we wouldn't encourage the cohesiveness if we didn't think the benefit was there. Yeah. So as I say, people won't work with others unless they truly know them and understand them. So that's one thing. The second thing is that these conferences were designed with award ceremonies in them to celebrate success. Now, our business has been built on long-term relationships with clients and staff. Longevity in the business has been a great key to success for us, where clients have had the same account managers for over 20 years, and so they're not having to retrain people, etc. So we've got lots of tenure. At the last conference, there were, I think it was 55 people celebrating more than 5 years tenure, and we celebrate that big time. I think 35 is the current record, although we've still got Jan Thomas, who started with us in 71. She had a couple of breaks, but she's still with us. And so people get a lot out of that. So people see people being awarded for their longevity and recognised and appreciated for what they've done for us over those years. It's a very powerful message. It really is.
You're making them feel part of something.
Absolutely, yeah. And they do. They feel part of a family, if you like. And it's a chance again for like-minded people to get together, because there can be, if you're a small division, let's say you're just starting a early childhood division in Brisbane and you're one person, that's hard work when everyone else is working in different sectors, doesn't know what you're doing. So that professional isolation is solved if you get them working with other people. We've got maybe 35 people that work in that business elsewhere, and they can talk to them about ideas and things that have come up in their business that have challenged them, that can solve problems there. So, the returns there, both in the appreciation from staff, but also in the learning and development of the people.
Is it possible to generalise about the difference between doing business in Sydney and Melbourne and doing it in Adelaide?
Sure. I'll talk Adelaide, then Sydney, and how Melbourne's a beautiful blend of both. Adelaide is very relationship driven. Adelaide's a market where I was taught you keep your nose clean. Everyone knows everyone in Adelaide, and
don't burn your bridges.
Reputation is everything. So reputation became critically important to me. Even honestly, as a kid, when I was working in the business, I was concerned how I was driving. I didn't want to cut someone off. I was really conscious of reputation in South Australia, because everyone knew each other. Go to Sydney, and the relationships were not as deep. Sydney's a bit transient in terms of their workforce. It's kind of, I don't want to denigrate it, but, there's a bit of fake it till you make it in Sydney. Everyone's trying to make their mark. They talk a big game, and they're trying to drive a good outcome. So, they'll change they'll change suppliers on the turn of a dollar. If they can cut $1 out of it, they'll change suppliers, and they'll use that pressure because there's so many operators over there, and they don't care. They kind of, it's more transactional.
Won't do that.
No, they're more loyal to the brand and more loyal to the history that you've got with them. So, but it's important you've got that history. So I found Sydney very challenging.
Because you didn't have the relationships.
Well, no, and we were trying to form relationships with people that kind of went around for a long time. So you might start somewhere, and then that HR manager took another job somewhere else, and you start again. So it was difficult, but local government was a saviour for us, and I'll come back to that. Melbourne's a beautiful blend of both. It's got great commercial opportunity, growth. There's plenty of action, plenty of opportunity everywhere. And it's relationship driven. They're loyal to others, respectful of others, and that has been a dream market for us. It's our most successful branch in the country.
Okay.
A lot has to do with how it was started with John and Annie, and obviously those that got involved since. But it's been one of our best markets because it's taken what we learnt in South Australia, what we learnt in Sydney, and applied some of that within that market. Turning point for us in Sydney, and I'll just jump back to that. Instead of trying to make it as a new player in Sydney, we've sought out people who'd moved from Adelaide and were now operating in Sydney.
There's lots of them.
And there are lots around. So I think at the time, Piper Alderman had opened a branch there, the law firm. But individuals, one of the ones that made a huge difference for us was Brian Carr, who was the CEO at Liverpool City Council at the time, ex-Tea Tree Gully.
Yep.
And Brian, he took us under his wing. He knew John very well with the history in local government. He took me out to Liverpool. He gave me an idea of how Sydney split up and the sectors that we should be looking at. He talked to me about what was going on in local government and what the future challenges were, and gave us some work at Liverpool. And on the back of that, we marketed ourselves into other councils. So we had some big breaks, and from people that were very kind to us. Yeah.
So where to from here? What else do you? It sounds like you've had some success over the years. What other things do you like doing in your life? And can I ask how old you are now?
Sure, 61.
61. Yep. Where do you go from here? Given that as you say, you got 36 years ahead of you. It sounds like potentially. What are you going to do? And where is the business going to go? You mentioned potentially, well, John liking the idea of going overseas. Is that a possibility?
Oh, look, it is. We would do it in the form of a recruitment catchment process. So maybe a UK office or something in Ireland to recruit and manage staff across to Australia. Ireland, we're in the human services area, which is social services and those sorts of things, child protection.
So, sorry, can I just ask, would you do it over there off the back of trying to get Australians recruited back over here, or why would you go to the UK or Ireland?
Well, the people that we've recruited out of those two areas in some of our sectors are highly specialised. And as part of some of their university degrees need to get experience, and we've got plenty of work in Australia for them to work. Right. So it would fill some of those bridges, but any other shortages that we had in certain markets, we would go internationally as a catchment. Easiest way to do it would be just a partner agreement with someone who's already there. But if we had to have an overseas site, I would start it as a recruitment centre to try and identify nursing, social services, child protection type people, etc. So built for purpose. That won't happen in the next 3 years, I don't think. Our next 3 year strategy is to consolidate what we have. We have 7 or 8 operating divisions at varying degrees of maturity across 7 branches or 6 branches at the moment. And so the next 3 years, if we made all of them as successful as the best one in each state, we'd double our business overnight. So we're going to spend time on making them as successful in their markets in each state, and not just rely on some of the states that are knocking it out of the ballpark. So consolidation won't be contraction; it'll be consolidation and establishing that dominance in the markets that we have in all states, not just some states.
Okay.
Yep.
And what's your role going to be in all of that?
So I'll keep going the way I'm going. We've instilled a CEO who has 16 years with the business. He's an incredible talent. He's been very successful in our Melbourne market, and had a difficult role because he was working with the founder and another board member, his wife, trying to be his own person in a Melbourne office when if someone didn't like what he was doing or saying, could walk down the hall and walk into John's office and have a bit of a chat. So John and Matt worked extremely well together. So I'll continue working with Matt. It's a big job, and he's realising how much of a big job it is. So it's I won't say it's a shared role. He has full accountability, but I'm looking at probably doing what I was doing in the 90s, what's falling through the cracks and what areas we should be paying some attention to, and doing the John McArthur type things and asking the questions, which I know might be soft points in the business that Matt might want to spend some attention on. The expansion into WA, we're probably looking at Northern Territory because of some regulations that are there. But, I'm still interested in growing the business and seeing the sectors be successful. I still deal with clients, so I do performance reviews for CEOs and general managers in New South Wales. And New South Wales is highly political. It's a difficult gig. So next week I'm off to Richmond Valley Council to facilitate theirs. I do Parramatta and a lot of the larger councils in New South Wales. I work with those councils and their CEOs. So yeah, I love it. I'm kind of interested in where that's at, and I'm interested in seeing the public sectors, I guess, spend money appropriately to get the best results for the community. And that's kind of a history of McArthur. We go into sectors where we can make a difference. So I'll keep doing that for as long as I can.
So McArthur's doesn't have a policy like some businesses where you have to retire at 60 or 62.
Doesn't look like it, does it? Yeah, I don't know where that one is. I've read the other ones, but haven't found that one.
It's fascinating that some businesses think you run out of puff and so you need to be marched out the door. That's clearly not the case in your business.
No, I was a little tired when we did the transition for the CEO, but last year was the first time I had 4 weeks off in one hit out of whatever it is, 43 years or so. So the hard years throughout all of this. So I'm enjoying being a little more choosy about when and what I'm involved in. But I've got a new interest in the business. Matt's doing a lot of the grunt work. He's fantastic with people. So he's great with staff. He's great at motivating and setting direction and that type of thing. And I'm still enjoying the client work. So, as long as that can continue. And the flip side to part of the business we haven't spoken about is our McArthur Community Care business, which is an NDIS provider, a direct provider to recipients, and it's been a huge success. We started in 2016. Again, you find the right person, and life becomes very easy for you. So, it has a magnificent reputation in South Australia, and we've taken that nationally as well. And there's a lot to do in that market at the same time. So that's kind of what I'll be doing.
Look, it's so inspiring to hear your passion, and the story of your father is just quite incredible.
It's extraordinary,
and for him to still be doing what he's doing is amazing, and still be having an impact at his age. And it sounds like he could keep going forever and ever.
Oh, absolutely.
And let's hope he does. But I know that your role in this business has been substantial, and you're very modest and very humble. I'm sure, like your dad, who I don't know well at all. So well done on your role in the growth of this business, which is one of the great Adelaide businesses, which started here, has gone interstate and is now a major national business. So I just have one last thing that I need to ask you, because we haven't touched on this. Your mum.
Yes.
Haven't asked about your mum. Can't believe we skipped over that. But just tell us a bit about your mum and the role she played.
Look, Mum was a magnificent support act. She passed away sadly in 95 from cancer, but she was a driven woman, and could turn her hand to anything. So she, I think, was was interested in architecture initially, and did some drafting. Didn't work while Dad was setting up the business, and supported him with the family of four. And then they had separated. In fact, I don't even remember when, but it's irrelevant. But when that happened, Mum went out and sold World Book. So she was
encyclopedias.
World Book Encyclopedia, and we had the best of the best as a resource in our home. And from there, she got some fantastic training, and from there she went into selling educational products into school, and single mum, jumping in a car, driving out to schools, and still managing the household. And she was instrumental in helping me get through some of my studies and courses that I did. Just a wonderful, caring but driven woman who was are very focused and loving.
Supportive,
Absolutely.
great work ethic.
Yep.
Things clearly passed down to her sons. Again, thanks very much for spending
James.
the morning with us and telling us all about an incredible journey. You should be really proud. We're really proud to have you as a client. You've been an amazing support to our firm over a very long period of time.
Well, as has your firm. It's been the advice and guidance that we've had from your firm, and Chris Marshall in particular has been incredible. One of the big influences of my both personal and professional career. So it's been great.
Oh, that's
been
good.
a great relationship.
Yeah, great. Well, I look forward to hearing all about the future of McArthur. It sounds like it's got a long, long way to go.
It does.
And who knows where it can go based on where it's gone. So thanks again, and all the best.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it.